Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for this question. Madam Speaker, just for the record, the actual act is called the Electronic Fare Ticketing Act. And the penalties actually, Madam Speaker, is not in the act itself, but in the subsidiary law of the legislation which sets out the maximum penalties that can be imposed, not just on bus drivers, but also travelling passengers and also bus operators who, for example, do not comply with certain requirements as provided for under the Act and indeed the regulations. Madam Speaker, as has been highlighted to Parliament, the Electronic Fare Ticketing Act, which has actually been bandied around for nearly 3 to 4 years. Honourable Pramod Chand will tell us he's the immediate past president of the Fiji Bus Operators Association. And government was very cautious about the introduction of e-ticketing for a number of reasons, has been highlighted, because we wanted a number of service providers within the industry, and we wanted to make sure that there was enough depth within the service providers so that the e-ticketing project would work well. Madam Speaker, the significant point about e-ticketing is obviously to capture revenue, not just for government but also bus operators. And it has been repeatedly said by bus operators themselves that in their assessment, that the main culprit, so to speak, that used to, for want of a better word, pilfer from the cash, giving of cash as bus fares, were the bus drivers. There were accounts of up to 1/3. The standard industry benchmark was about 1/3 of the takings from the day would be taken by the bus drivers. And so there's a very strong emphasis, in fact, by the bus operators that there needs to be a particular set of rules and regulations around ensuring that bus drivers do not actually continue to take cash after the e-ticketing is introduced. So indeed, Madam Speaker, we've been deliberating on this for about 3 or 4 years. And eventually, when the law did come into place, eventually when we found the providers, and a couple of them actually dropped off, I had given a full account of this to Parliament previously, we then have 2 months where the bus companies could make the transition. And we had what we call a dual system of payment. But of course, even prior to that, companies like Tavirua Transport had introduced e-ticketing on their own volition for over 1 year, where they had the dual system. But once the law came into effect, then we had 2 months of dual system. Now, after that, of course, there is no dual system. And this is one of the reasons why these fines are there, to ensure that the taking of cash does not actually occur and everybody gets treated fairly. Now, Madam Speaker, I also had the privilege of being invited to speak at the Fiji Bus Operators Association annual general meeting last Saturday. And again, there were certain issues that were raised. It would appear now that most of the bus drivers are actually complying with it, and the law is obviously working in that respect. But we have a new issue now, of course, that some bus companies, not all of them, some bus companies have raised, and that is that some passengers actually are not necessarily complying with it. They simply throw the coin at the driver and walk in. Now, Madam Speaker, if we look at the regulations itself, the law is somewhat, well, not somewhat, it is actually very much in favor of the travelling passenger. So, for example, if the machine does not work, then the passenger can travel for free. If, for example, they want to buy what we call a disposable card, and the bus driver or the bus company does not have it, they can go in for free. So it's very much skewed in terms of the passengers. Obviously, a couple of the bus companies actually raised it with us that on some of the routes, the one that was actually highlighted was Besari Lamy area, that there was a lot of abuse going on. The passengers simply coming in and throwing money and then walking away. So that's an area that obviously needs to be addressed. The LTA actually, Madam Speaker, has put in place some what we call inspectors to see that everybody is actually complying with the law. We'll also be reaching out to the Fiji Police Force to ensure that people who do try and breach it, there is some form of regulation in that respect. Now, as far as the penalties, etc., are concerned, of course, it's a changing platform, and this is why it's been put actually in the regulations. So Should the circumstances change, of course, later on, and the power dynamics becomes different, then the regulations will be amended accordingly. But at this point in time, that is the rationale behind it. And of course, with now the drivers' inability to take out 1/3 of the takings, we have reached out and said on a number of occasions, also publicly, that the bus companies need to remunerate the drivers properly. They need to increase their salaries. Because otherwise, if that was seen as a source of income, now you're cutting that source of income, you need to remunerate them properly so they don't actually pilfer, because there's no opportunity for them to pilfer. Thank you.